All right, so what's going on, guys? So I wanted to do this quick video about COVID, about vaccines, about everything that's going on. And if you haven't been living under a rock, you know that it has affected you in some way, whether you are praying about a decision of what to do with, the boosters or with the vaccines, where to spend your time, how to comply with certain things, with exemptions and many other things, right? I've done several videos on that, and I have given what the Lord has shown me and how He has allowed me to see this from not just facts or trying to understand and sort through that perspective, but rather just discernment in the spirit and what to do as a Christian. And I've never really told people you should do this, but rather to pray about it and to come before the Lord and really to ask Him for wisdom and to guide you in sorting through all these different things. And then between you and the Lord, if you believe you have peace to make that decision, that you would do it. But I've also said that the more informed you are, the more that you have knowledge and research, and you're trying to sift through all these things, I believe the Lord can empower you to make a better decision. And so I'm not insinuating one is the right answer or not, but it's very clear that there's a lot of things going on behind the scenes, and some things, quite honestly, just don't make sense. And so I want to do an update because there's a lot of different news, different things coming out recently. You have different mandates, a lot of changes with Omicron and several things. But I want to just pose a couple of things, some articles, and I'm going to just present this. I'm not here to say that this is fact or not. This is just what's in the news right now. And I'm saying that as a precaution for those that are trying to censor and block and things like that. So I know a lot of people get warnings and all that. So I'm here to just say this is what I've heard. This is what the current news is. And it's out there, and it's fact in that it's on websites, it's on CDC. This is what people have quoted as being said, and you can go look at that evidence. I'm not here to assert anything in terms of what is sound bites and quotes and stuff like that as being factual or not. So let's start, right? So you got recently the CDC panel advising against the Johnson & Johnson shot. Okay, and so there's a note about how this advisory committee on immunization practices, basically the advisory board to the CDC, had given this link to severe conditions, the TTS, right? And so I'm not going to go into the big thing, but basically they came out and said, hey, we recommend this lower than the other two. And this is what they said, right? So Americans who are unwilling or unable to get the Pfizer or Moderna COVID-19 vaccines should get the Johnson & Johnson COVID-19 shot, according to the director for CDC. And this CDC vaccine advisory panel recently recommended the agency make clear that the Pfizer and Moderna jabs, both of which utilize the mRNA, be preferred over the J&J one, right? And so the thing is that and let me make clear. So this person, Rochelle Walensky, did say that getting any vaccine is still better than remaining unvaccinated. But the problem here is that in this next quote, she says, given the current state of the pandemic, both here and around the world, any vaccination is better than no vaccination. Individuals who are unable or unwilling to receive an mRNA vaccine will continue to have access to J&J COVID-19 vaccines. So on one hand, you got this panel, and she's accepted the recommendation for it, saying that, hey, this J&J is not good. There's a link, especially for, I think, a middle-aged woman, and again, don't quote me on that, middle-aged woman, and how TTS has climbed according to the VAERS reporting system, the VAERS, and many things, right? So a woman ages 30 to 49. And again, I'm not going to get into the details of that. She accepted the recommendation and then goes around and says, hey, it's, if you can't get the other two, or you're unwilling or unable, then you should still get the J&J. But any rational person, if you deprioritize J&J, you would still say, okay, it's your life. Go try to get the Pfizer and the Moderna jabs. I'm just saying, in this kind of isolated incident, that's what the rational thinking would be, right? And so why would you still go around and say, hey, no, you can still get it, right? So issue number one that I have, when you look at that in isolation, if you see from that perspective, right? again, I have my thoughts on vaccines and all that. If you see my other videos, you know that I haven't gotten the vaccine. I will never get it, right? But I'm just presenting that from its rational, logical point of view. During Christmas, okay, the Surgeon General said that getting 3 shots, those that have 3 shots should wear masks indoors during Christmas with their family. Dr. Fauci said that families should provide proof of you being vaccinated to be let indoors to your house, right? And so, on one hand, you have supposedly all this protection. You have 3 shots, and you are supposedly protected. But why do you still need to do all this craziness of putting masks, staying indoors? And what is with this aspect of, okay, do you just recommend not going then if that's that big of a risk, or do you just tell people that if you're protected, right? A judge, okay, and then this is for, okay, so in terms of therapeutics, in terms of alternative medicines, again, I'm going to be very careful about this. I'm just quoting stats and surveys and things like that, and news. So a judge ruled that a hospital was in contempt because they refused to administer ivermectin to dying women despite the physician recommending it. And this court judge, I think in Georgia or somewhere, don't quote me on that, gave 2 options to either administer this drug or to pay $10,000 each day, right? And so why do you have judges? Okay, I'm just posing questions. Why do you have judges impeding on medical decisions for a hospital, for a doctor that they believe, as a board certified doctor, that this is what they believe they should administer, and yet the hospital and some of the jousting happening there saying, no, you can't be doing that. And then a judge had to step in to rule all that, right? So part of that, in some sense, doesn't make sense, right? So you have court battles on hospital things. On the aspect of natural immunity, you have all these new studies coming out. You have Israel, again, I'm just quoting these apparent studies, right? So Israel saying that they looked at 2/3 of the population, and those with natural immunity, right? Natural immunity is that you got the COVID once, and then you had built natural antibodies, and now you have what is equivalent to a vaccine in a sense, because you have the antibodies. They said that you were 6 times less likely to be infected compared to those that have the vaccine. Another study in Qatar, published in the New England Journal of Medicine, again, a highly regarded journal, 99.6% of those that have natural immunity are protected from COVID and getting it again. So reversed 0.04% of those that had antibodies and natural immunity got it again. They didn't get it as high as likely as much as those that have been vaccinated, right? And so you look at this aspect of natural immunity, you look at the aspect of therapeutics and natural remedies and other things, and why is it that there is this battle? Why is it that some articles and some data and studies are being suppressed more than others? So that leads me to this next thing, right? You got all these people, Facebook, Twitter, and these guys labeling, fact checking, labeling these things, making broad statements, and then a lot of things happening in court to fight those things. So let me give you some examples here. So Facebook recently, admitted in a court case, and this is a court case against John Stossel, that the labels that are put on the Facebook posts, and when it says, fact checking or whatever it is, that this is misleading, whatever that thing is. They said this in a court document, quote, "The labels themselves are neither false nor defamatory. To the contrary, they constitute protected opinion." So they're saying that these facts are protected opinion, that they're not actually facts. So they're dodging all this stuff that they're doing, outsourcing to independent, fact checkers and all these different things to protect themselves and to really just say, hey, this is all just an opinion. So don't mind us putting all these labels on your posts and deprioritizing it, censoring it, and outright banning you, right? Twitter is, I would say, in some sense, even worse, right? So Biden, right, had come out and said that vaccinated people can no longer spread the virus. But that's very contrary to what's actually going on, right? Breakthrough cases and stuff, and what the CDC website and these other guys, the directors, are saying, right? The CDC website says this, quote, vaccinated people can still become infected and have the potential to spread the virus to others, although at a much lower rate than unvaccinated people. And I forgot to mention that Twitter, they came out with their updated terms and conditions, and they said they will censor you if you say vaccinated people can still spread the virus. Dr. Rachel, the CDC director, says this, quote, our vaccines are working exceptionally well. They continue to work well with Delta with regard to severe illness and death, but what they can't do anymore is prevent transmission. So she admits that there. Even Dr. Fauci, Fauci, right, said that the duration of vaccine effectiveness is preventing COVID-19, reducing disease severity, reducing the risk of death, and the effectiveness of the vaccine to prevent disease transmission by those vaccinated are not currently known. So even he, and again, I'm not here to give credibility to him or whatnot, and there's a lot of things you can say about him, and I have my opinion. I'm not about to say it here, but even he, this supposed frontline, I guess a spokesperson is saying that the disease transmission by those vaccinated are not currently known, right? So it's going against what Twitter and Biden is saying. It's going against what other people, especially the CDC, is saying. And again, I have my thoughts on the CDC too, so you may have your thoughts as well. But again, there's this contrary narrative, and there's this pull to censor you, to silence you, and to have a current narrative of certain things. But when you dig deep, especially, and you don't even have to dig that deep, just go to the website, there's contrary and contrasting opinion, right? And then you got this evidence. You have 79% of those with Omicron have gotten the vaccine, and that's according to the CDC website. Multiple cruise ships have supposed fully vaccinated or nearly fully vaccinated. I don't know what, maybe 99 or whatever percent, because that was a requirement to get onto the ship, right? And there are multiple cruise ships that have had these outbreaks, 17 people in one earlier case, 48 in a recent case, I think yesterday. So you got all of this stuff going on where people are saying, okay, well, there are cases, vaccinated people are, getting the COVID and all this stuff. You got people trying to go and tell you what to do. The Surgeon General, like, hey, even though you have the booster shot and all this stuff, you should still mask up and all that stuff. And then you got people like the NBA, the NFL, and these guys. So here's one thing that the NBA is doing, right? So these guys are increasing testing from December 26th to January 8th. Masks will be required for players, coaches, and staff on the bench, as well as in the locker room, weight room, and all that stuff. So here's one interesting thing. They said that if a player received a booster shot more than 2 weeks ago, so meaning if you got the shot and 2 weeks have passed, after 2 weeks, quote, he will not be subject to holiday or game day testing. And so you have to wonder, right? Why if there's some data that's showing that you could get you can get COVID even if you have the booster shot, why do you stop testing for these guys? And if you've read the news from earlier in the year, I think in the summer, there was a CDC change, or rather mandate, and one of them said that after December 31st, 2021, this year, the CDC will withdraw the request to the FDA for emergency use authorization of the real-time, the CDC 2019 novel coronavirus real-time RT-PCR diagnostic panel. The array first introduced in February 2020, for detection of the SARS-CoV only. Okay, and so I'll just continue reading. The CDC is providing this advance notice for clinical laboratories to have adequate time to select and implement one of the many FDA authorized alternatives. So they're saying we're going to stop accepting, and we withdraw the request to use this, right, as a valid form of testing. So this PCR testing comes into question, as not only is it effective, right, and that's kind of the implication, but then it's talking about also a little bit later detecting both influenza, right, and COVID and SARS, COVID at the same time, right? So it's talking about, let's see here. CDC encourages laboratories to consider adoption of a multiplexed method that can facilitate detection and differentiation of SARS-CoV-2 and influenza viruses. Such assays can facilitate continued testing for both influenza and SARS-CoV-2 and can save both time and resources as we head into the influenza season. So you got to ask yourself, right? So if they had this test and you had all this reported false positives and all these things, a lot of people went to get a test. 2 of them said positive, two of them said negative. You had Elon Musk do that earlier at some point. Many other people, right? And even the CDC website talks about the prevalence of false positives. But here it's saying that you can detect, other tests can detect both influenza and COVID. So you got to wonder, has this been falsely detecting influenza or not? I'm not implying one way or the other, but those are some of the logical questions you ask yourself. If this test was not effective this whole time, how many people have literally been falsely, positive for this stuff? How many have just kind of gone through the cracks, right? And then if you have people that are vaccinated versus unvaccinated, what is the percentage of those that are vaccinated that got it versus not? And what kind of statistical either manipulation or not is going to come out of this? Because even with the NBA, if you stop testing the vaccinated, those that have the booster shot, and yet there's evidence, the cruise ships and all this stuff, the CDC director, then you would have to ask yourself, if you stop testing, then what if these guys, the NBA players, get COVID, right? So it's going to look, the stats are going to look like, okay, the unvaccinated may have the virus, or because natural immunity and all this stuff, like the surveys I just quoted saying, they're going to show that these guys are over it and they have a 0.04% chance of receiving it. So it may even look like this whole thing is going to go away, like poof, right? And so these are some of the things for which, if you dig deeper, you cross-check the things that people say, you think critically about it, and you ask yourself, and more importantly, pray about it, then you can see that some things just don't make sense. It's very fishy what's going on. It's very fishy in terms of how people are timing a lot of the stuff, the rules, how Omicron is supposedly, getting crazy and all these different things, right? Stats. And I'm not going to even go into statistical, I don't want to say manipulation, but attributing deaths, right? It was a big issue. Attributing deaths that have other underlying symptoms and they have died from other things like motorcycle accidents or whatever. And if they had COVID, you just tag them as having died from COVID, and you can't really distinguish those kind of things unless you dig deeper, or if it's wiped from the data, you just see it as somebody dying from COVID. But oh yeah, coincidentally, they also died from a motorcycle accident. So there's a lot of different things here for which, if you look at it and you see how the narrative is playing, how some people are asserting some things, how there's a counter argument, a narrative, there's suppression, there's news about, certain things being fake news and it's being fact checked and all these different things, right? Right now, we're in a battle. We're in an information war. A lot of things are settling in terms of the dust being settled, in terms of what information is true. More studies are being done, natural immunity and other, therapeutics and many other things are happening now, for which the public, and as time passes, I think a lot of that will come to light in terms of what's true, what has been hidden, what has been, behind closed doors that have been manipulated, have been propaganda, whatever it is, so that the narrative of this being that bad or not as bad or whatever is going to come to light. And so I'm not here to say that, if you got the vaccine or didn't or whatever, you were a bad guy or not, or you're doomed, whatever it is. But I'm here to say that a lot of things, if you are just living under a rock, if you're being told what to do, what to think, you got to question some of these things rationally, but also pray about it and ask the Lord, what is it that you would want me to do? And if you don't see it from a higher perspective of, recently there's also, I think, in a European country with vaccine passports and a chip being in your hand or whatever, wherever it is, those things are real. It's coming and again, it's not for, I think I heard that it's not for, sale, commercial sale, but the idea of these things leading into the end times, leading into the mark of the beast and all these different things for which the Bible prophesies, and we know to be true that it'll come at some point. But if you're not awake to it, and if you don't wake up, if you don't fight against some of these things, the mandates and some of the oppression, the narratives, the news, and all this stuff, if you're not awake to it, if you don't do your own research, if you're not sheep trying to just eat up what people tell you, then you're going to get destroyed, especially later on. When they tell you to take this trip, when they tell you to eat this, do that, go here, go there, it might lead to your demise, right? And just like, and I'm sensitive how I say this, but just like how the Nazis told people, hey, get on this train. It's no big deal. Hey, go into this shower and let's wash up. No big deal. And then all of a sudden you got gassed, right? And again, I'm not trying to, sound bad in saying that, but this is the reality. Where in the future, you take the mark of the beast, you're not going to heaven, right? And in this time period, if you're not careful, they say to eat this, do that, whatever it is, you could very well lead to your own death in many ways, especially if you are, as it's saying here, with TTS. And again, I'm just quoting things that are new studies, TTS, if you're a middle-aged woman. And again, I'm not trying to scare anybody here, but as more things come out, as more survey or more research, more peer-reviewed studies and all this stuff come out, and this battle of information comes to light, then you'll see there's going to be some crazy stuff, man, and you're going to be shocked. And so right now, guys, you gotta literally have some sense of skepticism, some healthy skepticism. You have to be able to question things. And again, I'm not here to assert this is true or not true, but I'm presenting what is news out here, like real life news, and then telling you that you have to think about these things and pray about it and see what God wants you to do and how you should react and go about your choice in life and how it's going to affect you. And all this stuff really affects you. It's going to, if it affects you now, it's going to affect you down the line, especially as things get worse in the near or far future, whatever you want to call it. And so I believe, like I've said before, a lot of this is going to go away. It's just a pestilence. It's going to come and go. It's just going to get, a little worse for a little bit. It's not going to be good temporarily, but it's going to just boom. Like, I don't want to say go away, but it's not going to be an issue anymore. And I've said that prophetically. I've said that with how the Lord showed me certain things and many others. And so, guys, be encouraged. Don't be downcast. But it's a time to wake up and to think on your own, to pray about it. So God bless you guys, and I'll talk to you guys soon.